Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for bringing these topics of the gallery program in Talking Galleries, because I think that's the very heart of what we are doing, and we always discuss very often and openly parameters which are around it, and very rarely what is the gallery program about and the role it plays in our respective galleries. Maybe I would like to start with a question to Matthias, who is the youngest to have started a gallery here. Very often in Germany, we hear about program galleries. I think for me it's even a German concept by itself. And I wanted to ask you, Matthias, is it something, because it seems that what you're doing appears to me as a program gallery, is it something you consciously developed beforehand as a concept or as a model that you wanted to adopt before you opened the gallery, or is it something that is for us, other people that we recognize out of your work? Is it a conscious decision to build a program gallery?
I think it was a very conscious decision to have artists we really believe in, we want to work with, but also to form a program which where sort of everything fits together. So you have a gallery where you could have the artists all maybe in a show or in an art fair booth or so, and nothing falls out of place. And it was not really a conscious decision that we have to be this conceptual program gallery. We want to do this is like how we see ourselves in 5 years with so many artists we have now, and they all work in this one direction. So I think we have like it's me and my business partner Beat Reber. We have a certain taste which developed over the course of time, us being part of this art world, and then deciding to open our own gallery, and then sort of looking for our artists which sort of fit our taste. We're a bit a love for sculpture, for installation, for in situ projects, artists which work with space in what way or another, and so this was basically the starting point, and then everything more or less formed together organically around that.
Okay. And Sylvia, you are one of the rare gallerists and one of my very best friends in the art world. So I'm very glad to have the chance.
I share this with you.
Yeah, I am very glad to be in an open discussion with you and not in one of our wonderful private discussions. And you are one of these people who do not come from the art world. Mm-hmm. We have a different background, and that's maybe not the topic, but you open a gallery not as young as many as we did, so you were like already quite mature, and it seems that your gallery program is extremely coherent in many ways, that you have like a very clear vision of what you are interested in art, and the kind of weird situation is many people who work in the art field are not so as articulate, even people who did study art history, etc., as you are. So how is this miracle possible that someone who comes from a completely different field goes in the art world with one of the best programs I've seen the last 10 years, and at least one of the most articulated ones? How is this miracle possible, Sylvia?
I think it just work.
Yeah,
I can only say that. I didn't study art. I didn't work in a gallery. When I decided to start the gallery, it's 13 years ago. It will be 13 years ago next year. So I was 40 years old already, but I knew nothing. And I think that knowing nothing gave me the strength to have to do a lot of things, and to give me the only possibility is just to listen to myself. And maybe I am a person, I'm maybe a bit sophisticated, maybe I have taste, maybe I have eyes, and maybe I have brain. And maybe this combination of things, and the fact that I was not following any rules per se, because how could I? I mean, it's not that like one day you get up and you say, okay, I start a gallery. I decided to quit my previous job, which had a lot of elements that have been very useful in the development of the gallery. I was in film production. I had a lot of experience in putting, people working together, creating a certain kind of environment for things to happen. But I had no experience, and of course I was very aware of that, and my first idea was to start to find a job in a gallery, doing the minimum. I was ready. I was 40, but I was ready to go through every single little step. But it didn't happen. I was too old. People, I tried to find jobs in Barcelona in galleries, and of course it was clear that I didn't just want to have a little money to spend on CDs or records or whatever for a weekend, that I was more ambitious than that. So I reached a point where I said, okay, let's do it. I was brave, and I started the gallery, and I didn't have a program on the first day of the gallery. I didn't have a program on the first year. I didn't have a program on the second year. But maybe by the third year, there was something. There were some ingredients there that were starting to cohere or to make sense. And it's because I did it. So if I have a personality, if I have ideas, if I have certain things that I like and certain things that I don't like, if I have clear ideas about what I want to do and what I don't want to do, I think you start creating something. But it's been very organic and very intuitive. No pre-designed strategy. How could I have a strategy with no experience? It's not possible. So, a miracle? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think miracles exist. It's just more, being brave and taking risks and being clear about, okay, I don't want to be a gallery working only for a local context. I traveled a lot before I started the gallery. I saw many different kind of shows. I learned by looking and by reading and by traveling and by going inside galleries and seeing many things that I liked and many things that I didn't like. I didn't like that you sometimes go in a gallery and no one even looks at you. And when I went into a gallery and someone asked me something in a friendly way, I felt better. So that's what I tried to incorporate to my gallery, and it seems that at that point it was a little new, at least in our context.
And Gigiotto.
But I didn't invent anything.
I mean, the artists do. And I don't know if you didn't invent anything. Actually, that's a question, because when you think about an art collection, it's really what would describe a good collection, besides the fact that the good collectors are the people you are working with and the bad ones are the ones you are not working with. But it's probably when the whole collection makes more sense, is more precious than the addition of its parts. And I would maybe describe the gallery program from like a similar perspective, that it's more than just the sum of all the artists you are working with. And Gigiotto, also, would you describe the gallery program? Is it for you a little bit the DNA of a gallery? Because we heard a lot previously about other aspects of the gallery business. The agency part, which is, I think, something like 80% of what we do. Then you have the sales part. You have lots of discussions about what should be outsourced or not. Would you say that sometimes you see also that more and more you have galleries working with curators? Is it a certain way to outsource the issue of content in a gallery or not? How do you see this idea? Because it's more and more to work with curators instead of just deciding everything by yourself on the artistic level.
I work with curators because I am a curator, in the sense that I started my gallery from was something that happened because I worked and I still try to keep this position open. I used to work as a curator mostly. I was writing. I'm still Berlin editor of most magazine. I try to keep all this position open. And my approach to, or how Supporting Lopez started, the gallery was something that in a way happened through a series of passages and phases that were deeply related with the position of research and the curatorial possibilities. So supporting development is something that arrived to that point through these phases, and I think that it's very important, I don't know, more than to work with curators. I think it's very important to keep, at least in certain phases of the career of a gallery, to keep a kind of curatorial position open. That means centrality to the art, centrality to the idea, and that means definition of the project. That means a consequence in what you develop into your program. I think it's very important. It's very important this. Regarding the presence of the curator into galleries, if I understood the question, I think it's something that is developing recently more and more, but I think it's more related with mid-high level gallery that needs, I think, to have inside the structure a kind of open eye on what's...
Yeah, the question is much more about outsourcing, because, I mean, the more galleries develop, the more we are tempted to take fragments of what we do, and we do love the complexity of what we do, of what we love it, this complexity, but it's very hard to manage every aspect of the gallery work perfectly at every level. So, of course, the easiest thing, there are many things we outsource all the time. I mean, I heard about the PR aspect. Personally, as a gallerist, I never had any PR person, and I don't do PR. So, but it's a big difference between American galleries and European galleries that for us it's not key. And lots of technical aspects of the gallery work are outsourced. But my question is really, is like, if you commission a curator to do a show for you with maybe the idea of representing one of the artists that will appear in this context, is it a way of outsourcing the gallery program in a way of getting help from the outside to develop the gallery program? Is it something that doesn't appear to you, not only with your specific case, but just your opinion about it? Don't you think that it's maybe a trend that could be dangerous to start to delegate, which I described as the DNA of the artist, to outsiders?
I think, from my point of view, and in general, what I think is that I believe in possible collaborations. I believe in the discussion. I believe in the exchange, and I believe also in the possibility to host a project and to involve a curator in doing something in the gallery. But the first step that I consider is never deeply strategical. I consider the aspect of all, it's more romantic in a way. I consider the aspect of creating an exchange. And then, of course, in the moment that you are building together, or the curator is building together with you, the project, or you try also to open a discussion in which are the possibilities that can come after. I think that we also did exhibitions without then taking any artists out of the show and working for us, because I think that is important sometimes also to add and to see and to be close to something that can be also very different from you, and maybe you don't continue to represent. I really believe in this aspect. I really believe in this idea of touching things, but without really thinking that then this thing has to belong to you in a way. I think that is a process, it's a kind of flux that I want to follow. Of course, sometimes, of course, group shows and the collaborations with curators can be also propedeutic to an addiction to another vision, to arrive to points that maybe you are not able by yourself to touch. I repeat, it's not really the case of the structure that I run.
Okay, I have a question for Matthias, because you grew up somehow in this new generation of galleries. When we see that you have the mega galleries that just started, I mean, they seem to be very visible the last 10 years. So this is your environment. And in this environment, you have, of course, what I want to do is to kill a little bit the romantic discourse of the program gallery, because there is this romanticism and this trend to think that every gallery which is not commercially driven, but let's say curatorially driven, is delivering shows which would be more interesting than commercially driven galleries. And to my experience, it's not the case. So sometimes you have extremely very commercial galleries, especially in New York, who do absolutely incredible exhibitions that I would love to be able to produce. And then you see program galleries, especially in Europe, they romanticize about the idea of the gallery, of the aesthetics discourse, but when you see the results, they are not necessarily at the same level. Don't you think that there is a kind of contradiction between this romanticism of the programmed galleries and the gap between what they do on the aesthetics level?
Yeah.
And the mega galleries, which are commercially driven, and sometimes they are able to produce more culturally relevant projects than galleries which are producing for culture.
I mean, the mega galleries, like if you go to New York, of course, there's some spaces you don't know if you're in a museum or if you're in a gallery. Also, it's also sort of happening in Zurich with the Löwenbräu compound, which houses several institutions and big galleries. It's freshly renovated, and you don't know where the gallery ends and the institution starts. I think as a gallery should be always both sides. It should have I think, as my personal view, a very strong program which you believe in, which is nothing where you pick the artists because they sell very well, because you pick the artists because you believe in them, you love the art, and you want to really sort of help them with their career. You're the agent going back to the thing. This is what I love to do, like what Adam said, like wearing several hats and being the psychiatrist and really helping the artists on the way. But on the other hand, you're also a business, and you have to never neglect the commercial aspect. And it's not as easy, and I failed at that, or we failed at that as well, as probably every gallery in some extent do, to sort of really keep those both sides in balance and have the business side as well. And I was thinking maybe what are we going to? Has it become too intellectual? Is it too complicated? Are we just like spinning around, producing huge texts? I mean, I think for me this is also a thing in the art world that like galleries tend to write the press releases where you at the end you don't know what's happening about anymore because it's just so much air blown into the text. And for us, when we started the gallery, we said like we don't want any text. Because we just can't do it, and it's always bad, and we don't want it. And we realize it doesn't work because for press people, for journalists, you need a text. They're sometimes a bit lazy. They need something to see. Also for other people to sort of get an insight to an exhibition when they can't come to Zurich. Not everybody can come to Zurich. We're not in Chelsea, where people just walk in during the week. So we're dependent on a few dates in the year when people actually come to the city. And the rest of the year, they check online and see what's happening there, check the images, and maybe read the text and get a small insight into what might be interesting.
Then I have just a very short question.
Yeah.
Do you think that the nationality of the artist is key when you make a decision to represent an artist?
No, not at all. We started in Switzerland with one Swiss artist. So for us it was important to go to this country. I mean, I'm German. My business partner is Swiss, but we're both not from. He's not from Zurich. He's from Basel. But we never had anything to do with Zurich. And for us was key to go to the city and bring also an outside perspective. Of course, you have to work with artists which are in your country, and you also see that in terms of how many visitors come to your openings. If I show a Swiss artist, my gallery is packed. If I show a New Zealand artist, it's a bit less. So, but this is like this is how it is. But I think it's very important to have an exchange to bring both sides to the table, make the gallery interesting, have invite other curators, other gallerists to come to your space, do shows, do like. I don't think it takes away like picking up this question. It takes away the identity of the gallery, because the identity of the gallery is something you can't really take away. If you maybe, I don't know if Gagosian has an identity, sort of. Or this is a different picture. Sort of. I'm talking about my range, and therefore I think it's important to it's an international world, and the art world is international, and the artists live all over. They travel, and to show my taste, but my international taste.
But you know, for instance, Matthias, when I opened my gallery, I heard constantly, "Why don't you work with an American artist? Why don't you work with Asian artists?" And there is a tendency now, like I call it the United Colors of Benetton tendency, that that galleries and New York galleries are specialized in this discourse. We have also one in Italy, actually, but always like representing artists from each continent. To be an international gallery means to represent artists for each continent in the world. I see it more as a strategy to access markets. So whenever there is like new wealth somewhere in Kazakhstan, you need a Kazakhstan artist. New wealth in Indonesia, you need you get an artist from this area. And after you use this artist to explore the market, to access collectors, to help them.
Apply for Art Basel Hong Kong. Then you apply for Art Basel Hong Kong with that artist.
Yeah, exactly. So you have this tendency, and I think that the nationality of the artist is more important than ever, because it's actually because it hides the lack of discourse about the practices themselves. So it's very easy to. And I'm the first to. I'm totally guilty because I'm the first to behave exactly. Like this, when people ask me about an artist, I always start to tell them their age and nationality, which is and not to describe exactly what they do. It's always because it's somehow requested. Now I have a question mostly for Sylvia. You have also quite a European program.
Very European, it looks. There's one American, one Mexican.
And do you think that you would gain, I mean, commercially speaking, to have more artists from different continents?
Maybe in the short term, yes. But who knows what's going to happen in 5 years? Maybe then having an artist from India or North Africa or an Eastern, will not be in fashion anymore. So I'm open to bring artists from other nationalities outside of Europe. Why not? For me to do a studio visit and having to take a flight 12 hours in a plane is something that I am considering now. It affects my life, and maybe I don't want to do that like 10 times every year. So it all depends. But that artist could live, of course, in Europe. There's practical issues that I am considering now. I'm open to every nationality. The nationality of the artist has a meaning. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. Maybe it has too much a meaning now.
Or would you describe this meaning?
It means things, For a young curator, if you have an artist from Morocco, that's already something, even before they look at the work. This is something that I see every day.
Do you share the same opinion about the nationality of the artist?
Yes, I think it's important if you want to focus on a certain kind of areas that in a way is important to understand and maybe are not represented. But in general, I really don't look too much at the nationality of the artist. I discover also later where the artists are from, also because often they study in certain areas. If they studied in London, then they grew up artistically there, and then you discover that the artist is Bulgarian, and then this adds something to what you see maybe. Or they study in the US, and then they come from abroad. I don't think it's really, from my point of view, something that I consider in the first instance. Also because I come from Napoli, from Italy, from a reality that used a lot and also abused of the kind of this dimension of the identity, that turned also to be a little bit a problem, because turned also to be something that was more related with a kind of folk idea of self-representation. So I try to work always in this idea of going out and taking in terms of identity only the aspects, and considering in terms of the identity only the aspects that for me are important. When is the right moment to consider them? It's
not easy.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's not easy. You sometimes you overlook, sometimes you make mistakes, sometimes there is a good artist in front of you and you don't see it. All these things happen. Also, we don't have the key to every successful movement all the time. I was not concerned about nationalities. Maybe I'm a bit more concerned now because I see that the world has a kind of like demand for that or even gender. I mean, I have been. There's only two women in my program. There's 15 artists, which is not very many, maybe after 12, 13 years. But I have been. I have heard comments saying, "Why don't you have more women in your program?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, it's not that I only wanted to work with men at all.
Are you sure?
It just happened. I'm open. Probably my next additions to the gallery will be women. But before being women, they will be good artists. At least I will think that they are good artists before they are women, or from Australia, or from New Zealand, or from whatever in the world.
That's
I
great
try
that you
to
bring
look
it.
at the work first. Second, at the person, not the artist, the person, because I have to work with that person. And my intention is to work with that person for a long time. So, as much as I can understand that we can get along, this is important for me.
And Giotto, do you care about this gender issue in building your program or not?
The point is always I care, but it's never central. I don't know. I think it's naturally. I'm naturally in the direction that the consideration from different aspects is always very important. So in this sense, I build the program considering that at a certain point I really need the female touch in what I'm trying to think, and then automatically there is this research that goes in that direction. In my program, I have half of the artists that are female, and maybe it's the side that I follow more in certain moments in terms of exchange, in terms of dialogue, in terms of maybe when I need something more sophisticated. I don't know, I consider it, but it's not something that animates my decisions. I try to stay always in a kind of true dimension, because I think that I have inside this kind of
Is it
possibility
important for
already.
you?
So.
No.
The gender
No,
issue?
no. I'd love to have more female artists. I think it's nice to have like a equal amount, but it's not an issue at all. I think foremost, it's as Sylvia said, it's if the artist is interesting to me, if I think this is something which fits to the gallery and fits to us. The personal thing is also very important. I'm happy you pointed it out, because it's you're working in a very close relationship together, and I don't want to work with someone who I'm gonna hate after half a year. So this is a big question. Right? Why are there not so many female artists? Why do female artists don't make so much money as male artists? But it's I think it's a deeper problem. It's also maybe going back to the art schools and looking at the system. But it's not basically the gallery is my personal system, and my system is about the arts and not about the gender. So if there would be more artists, female artists, which actually touch my taste, I have no problem taking on the female artist, but I would not take a female artist just because she's a female artist.
Of course not, but for me personally, it's a concern. So I think even if I fail and if I don't, but from the very beginning on, when I started the gallery, I wanted to have as many female artists as male artists. I failed, I agree, but it's not because I think for me it's important to be conscious that it could be a problem just to work with male artists if you are like, especially if you are a male.
You're a man, I'm a
Exa-
woman.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it could be seen as
It's
it could be a
different.
problem. I see also at the moment that you have more and more very successful galleries, commercially speaking, who have a kind of specificity of having no program. They have lots of quality, but for me, there are lots of homologies between politics and aesthetics. That's maybe because of how I grew up and what I studied. But let's say that if you do these analogies, I know they are a little bit problematic. For me, they are not that problematic. But if you represent like politicians, like because art and politics are very close, they also and if you would be working and representing artists, for me there are contradictions on the aesthetics level of working with certain positions and other positions. I mean, there are some artists who are in the same program in conflict. And I see that at the moment the most powerful galleries are the ones who don't care about this very problem. That meaning that you can show like a very politically engaged artist and right after a very reactionary position, which is maybe with some quality. Huh? You can be reactionary with lots of qualities. But I see that these conflicts are not discussed anymore. And what qualifies maybe to my eyes a program gallery is to take care about this very aspect. And I would like to hear each of you about this topic of, do you think that there are contradictions working with two different artists, that some artists you love, but you see that it's impossible to work with both because it would be a contradiction? Giotto, maybe?
I don't know. I think that every artist that is part of my program, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but from my point of view, is strongly related with the other. Not always because there is a red line that you can see easily, but I think because there is a kind of general atmosphere that animates the decisions and the choices. So sometimes in terms of language, you can have the possibility to see two different aspects and possibilities and things. But in general, the artists I work with are all animated more or less from the same kind of vision. In terms of relation, also political vision. I decided to consider more than any kind of Marxist or a structure vision, vision that is more related with something that can deal with poetry. I like a lot to follow two of my, let's say, generationally different artists. That one is Henri Chopin, French concrete poet, died in 2008, that was an anarchist. And the other one is Julien Beck, the founder of the Living Theatre, that was an anarchist too. Mm-hmm. And I think these positions deal much better with what they think. Also, the definition of politics have to deal or dialogue in terms of art. I'm not so sure about political art in general because I think
it's not
that
what I said. No, I didn't speak about political art.
It's more about the consequence and how the contradictions. I think that the artist has the fortune to live in a very free position, and this free position is also, or can also be, a deep political position. And I try to choose artists for my program that in a way try to activate this possibility. Of course, I don't say that every artist has a political position, but I like to imagine that already this kind of possibility, this kind of gesture, if it's conscious, can be also political gesture. So more or less, the artists I work with are or connected, and I don't see, I hope, contradictions.
But not with your program, but don't you see that some galleries are working with artists who are in total opposition on the aesthetic level? Do you agree on this or not?
Yeah, but it depends also which is the direction that you give to your gallery. If the direction is deeply related with the market,
but how do you explain that those galleries who don't care about this coherency are more successful, commercially speaking, than the others? That's actually my question.
Maybe yes, of course. If you try only to place your work into a kind of market position, your choices are very independent. Of course, you have more possibility that someone that try to give like a kind of coherent progression to the program. Then, the choice that you do after the first choice that you did is coherent, but maybe is not coherent in terms of market, in terms of sales, but then you are taking your risk because you are deciding to follow this idea. And so I think it's a completely different job and it's a completely different vision that enters into the discussion.
And Sylvia, how do you see this? How do you position yourself about?
I don't have maybe an answer for that. Sometimes, if you have all this consistency and coherent program and no conflicts among the artists you show, and it may be that a part of the audience, which may be not a small one, sees that what you do as a gallerist and how do you project your program is a little bit too intellectual sometimes. It is seen that way, which I don't think it is. And I think that a lot of people are not comfortable with that sometimes. So maybe they prefer to buy works that are totally, one is red and the other is black and nothing happens. It could be that there is an amount of people, potential collectors or buyers, that are a little bit of scared sometimes if they go to an art fair and then see a booth that is very well curated. They like it, but maybe they don't buy from you. They buy from something that has an autonomy that means that you can use this thing, that object, and place it immediately anywhere without a context. So sometimes maybe galleries who try to do better booths sell a little less.
Do you agree with this? Because you did
Because we show a whole thing and it's so precise and so nice that some people scare about that because they don't know how to do it. Alone.
Yeah, Matthias, do you agree with this? I think it's a very good point, this idea that sometimes quality at a certain level could create fear, while galleries who don't care about this coherency, aesthetic coherency, it's easier for an audience to access these galleries. Is it something you're conscious about, or you don't care about?
Of course. You see it in the auction market. The painting is easier to sell than a giant installation. And this is, and people, of course, rather. I would say the majority of people rather maybe go to a painting which is an abstract, colorful painting, and then to have maybe a conceptual artist from the 50s who's just been rediscovered or so. And because you actually have to invest some time. I mean, time is an issue nowadays, especially in art fairs where you have around 300 galleries, and you. People don't know how much time to spend where, and really see things, especially also with video art. I mean, I see it for myself. If I go through an art fair, I really don't have the time to sit down and actually see a work which is maybe 20, 30 minutes long and take the time and rest and actually discover this artist. So there's definitely a certain respect, maybe sometimes fear about art which steps away from the being very easy and being maybe a commodity or so. But I think there's also a lot of people who appreciate that and who are going to our galleries, going to art fairs specifically because they want to see art which is not always easy and not always so accessible, and find a way to make it accessible. I mean, this is also our job to sort of it's not always filling the living room with art. So it goes beyond that, and because also people they always, when you show video art, they ask you how do you display that, and then you see collectors' homes, and I've been to Toronto in the beginning of the year, and there was went to a collector's house, and he built a construction consisting of a aluminum ladder, and he placed with a hanging systems 3 monitors on the aluminum ladder and had it in his living room, and on the monitors different artworks running, and then on his main TV screen and stuff. And he said, like, I can switch it off, I can watch football, or I can have my artworks. And there's always like ways of dealing with art, and I don't think you have to be afraid.
Yeah, but it's also because changed a lot the speed and the perception of art recently. When I met Jocelyn the first time was because I saw and I was absolutely impressed by this artist in an art fair in Liste that was Clemens von Wiedermeyer. When I was buying for the Collezione Mora Greco, I bought Ferruccio Made Me Hardcore by Mark Leahy, and I bought it in an art fair. I was able to buy The Ballad of Sexual Dependency by Nan Goldin in an art fair. And the point is that today there is a speed that it's very strange, and there is a different idea of art that is all about hanging this piece somewhere. And this is really, really tough in relation then with the possibility of art, because when we were buying videos, I bought Dara Friedman from Gavin Brown. I was buying a lot, but the idea was more to buy a piece of art, to buy the work of that artist. Now the thing is that I want to have the object, I want to live with this element, I want to have the property, and I want to also see which is the value every day that someone comes in my house. And so this is a little bit the problem also in terms of, it's not only the political aspect, not the political aspect or the intensity. I think that it's really a problem of speed and also a little bit also vulgarity that there is around in terms of the relation with the art and what is art today. At least you can discuss about video art or stuff like that. Only in reality it's like puzzle, because there is Art Unlimited where you can finally again see something like that. But then I'm really, really sad that everything turned into this kind of aspect of use of art.
But you agree that the gallery program is what makes you successful or not, right?
Sorry?
Do you agree that what your gallery program will determine the success of your gallery?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because actually this is also something I hear a lot when I speak with very young emerging gallerists. They always ask for advice. How does it work? The art fairs, how should I do? And I also see, because I'm like many others in some art fair committees, and sometimes I see like extraordinary well-built projects with lots of care that you just have to put in the trash because you have no sensibility, and it's all about like very professional but empty. And you see that you have lots of course, very young. I think the youngest generation of gallery is more sensitive to the figure of the curator than their. So I'm not always related to the past as something that would be better. I think there is lots of quality in the young generation of galleries, a lot, probably even more than the generations before.
No, but I was talking more with the audience.
No, I understood. But then the something I'm interested in is to see that you have also lots of people, probably also in this room, who are like thinking about opening a gallery, and they want to understand the contract, they want to understand the agency role, they want to understand lots of things. But in the end, what will make them successful or not is the artists they are working with. If these artists are important or will appear to be important, they will be successful, even if they are bad professionals. I mean, you have some galleries who are like Chantal Crouzel, they are not specifically good salespeople, but they have the best artists, so people who come to them will be able to develop, to make wonderful acquisitions. And sometimes in Paris I heard things, collectors complaining, she's not so easy to deal with, and then they go to dealers who are very pleasing to work with, and they don't go and get very good artworks. So it seems to be, so it's also key to the success of, I think now I'm addressing a little bit the audience with people who are like starting a gallery, thinking about running a gallery, and many of them put lots of effort in actually all the parameters who are not key to the success of a gallery. Do you agree with this analysis? Cecilia?
Absolutely. The choice of the artist is the most important, but there is not one way to do it. There's many ways. There's many good artists, many. And not all of them will be in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 galleries. And there's many more to come.
And I have a last question to all of you.
And also the life of an artist is very long by definition.
Nowadays as well?
Maybe a bit shorter.
It's a bit shorter?
Our life may be a bit shorter, yes.
No, and I have a last question.
I'm just saying that, you can work with young artists, emerging artists, but you can also work with artists that have been around, maybe hiding a little bit for whatever reasons, and still establish new things with them. Definitely, the program is the artist, but there's no recipes. I mean, it's like, the young generation, and this is not only galleries, it's only artists, they want to know everything before they start. You will learn with time. It has to be more organic, and some days will be very dark, and some days will be very bright, and you will have to face all sorts of problems. But if your artists are good, and every time you do a show, the number 1 or the number 2 or the number 3 show, I know this sounds very romantic, but it's the truth. At the end of the day, when you have a good artist and you're able to do a good show and good work, it's just that's what means something.
Matthias, last question, but for everyone. Do you work with some of your artists to build your gallery program? Are they part of the discussion, of the conversation about building the program? The artists you already are working with? Or is it really your sole decision, or you and your business partner?
No, of course. I think it's very important to include the artists of the gallery when extending the program, and if I constantly ask my artists sort of give me recommendation, because I think yesterday was already stated that this is the best source to get to continue a program, because artists know artists. They're probably even deeper into the scene than I am, and give a different aspect. But also for me, it's important to include them, because they might have different objections or additions than I have. So it's like that doesn't fit, because like sort of our practice is too close, and these are things you have to be considerate of. In the end, it's me and my business partner who make the decision. That's clear, but I'm definitely including all the artists, the majority of the artists, into this process when I add someone.
The same with both of you, or not?
If you
work closely with the artists you represent to go on with the gallery program, the gallery program is something which has to live and be built over time. But is it something you work on with the artists you are working with already?
Yeah, I mean, of course. It helps develop many things. The program is not only one artist, it's a number of them, and you put the work together all the time, one way or another. So the interaction with, if not all of them, a good part of them is important.
This would be a little bit the recipe, because you said there is no recipe, but
there is no one way to do it.
No, but
art is very open, and it can be painting, it can be installation, it can be sculpture, it can be a book, it can be a text, it can be.
At least it's a starting point. If it's not a recipe, if you are like, let's say, somewhere in the world, you want to open a gallery. What would you recommend to someone who has this wish? If you start to work with it, because I want to be a little bit more practical, and if you, for instance, my advice, and now Giotto, you will have the final word afterwards. My advice would be to say, okay, if you're planning to open a gallery, or you probably already know some artists, work with the one you know already who gave you this desire to build the gallery program. and forget about what you think about what is the market is, etc. And this would be my advice. What would be your advice to someone who is planning to open a gallery and who is thinking about building his program?
Of course, to follow, first of all, his paths and his interests, and then of course the collaboration and the voices of the artists are always very important in building the program. It's or directly that artists that directly suggest you some names, and then you are happy because of course this adds one more element to what you started already with him. Or as Matthias was saying, now there is another view to the thing. Or not directly, you work with an artist and your point of interest is that, and then automatically you look at something that is very close to that situation, and then you want to continue to follow this discourse, putting together elements. So in a way, the presence of the artist, directly and not directly, in the construction of the program, it's quite important and present in my case. For who wants to open the gallery, I think they have to follow what they want, what they feel, and they have to follow also the people that are around them. So I don't know if I understood the question well. I think yes.
Time for questions probably now. Thank you very much, all of you. No questions when we speak about the gallery program? No, would have been.
Can you hear me? I have a question. Given the fact that all of you are doing such innovative work programmatically in your own galleries, I mean, Sylvia, I was just visiting you yesterday. You have an amazing installation of 248?
676.
676 original drawings by an artist who, never thought of this as an artwork. Made these works every single day for the last several years, and it's beautifully installed in the gallery. And,
Thank you.
And my question is, if that work has another life outside the gallery and continues, if a museum takes it, if it goes into a private foundation collection, what's your position on having curatorial credit for having conceived with that artist that particular installation?
It's okay. I'm just a mediator, It's everything's temporary, so I did my job. It's already there. From now on, it will go somewhere else. I have been part of it. Who wants to give me credit will give it to me. Who doesn't will not give it to me. But the artist already gave me his credit, and I gave his credit to him too.
I guess this goes back to the provenance of shows and how they function.
It's tough out there, and I don't need this. I don't need to receive all this. Oh, you're so great! You did it so well. No. I don't have to hear this every minute of the day. I'm fine. I just did my job. I know exactly what I did. It's fine. Of course, we have to take care of what happens after. And we will do our best. We're professionals, and we will do our best to take good care of where every artwork goes. But sometimes it's a little bit beyond our control at the same time. We cannot control everything once it leaves the gallery. It's not possible all the time, at least for me.
There's one question there.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering, you spoke about nationality of the artist. I'm just wondering if a gallery's identity is based on more the geographical aspect, so covering a region. Of course, the nationality and where the artist works is very important. How can you keep coherent then a gallery program or the identity if you would like to include maybe a couple of artists that are not from that region because they actually fit in very well? Would that kind of distort then the identity? Will it be compromising, or is that something that is doable?
I think it's totally doable. I think for us, for any of us, it would not be a problem. The problem is much more to look for something that you are not related. You know, let's say there is something for me to really express my deep feelings. There is something colonial, post-colonial, to go to the other part of the world, to go to a place where you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, you will never know the culture very well because it's too far away from you, except if you really spend the time to learn the language, and you just decide that this artist is the best out of the scene, and you will work with him in Europe. I find it very pretentious. Some have the capacities to really grab an artist in a different cultural context and do a wonderful choice. But very often, it's a little bit what I call compagnie des Indes art. You know the compagnie des Indes. I don't know how to translate it to English. Will need some help. You know this. Sorry. East India Company. So it's a little bit like an export product for the Western world, for the market. And I don't want to work with one of these artists because I won't be able to judge if it's one of them or if it has a totally different quality. For me, I find it very difficult. Some galleries I recognize have this talent to really go on the other side of the world and find an outstanding artist. I'm sure that I don't have this capacity. I need too much. I need to know more about the cultural environment and to feel at ease with it to be able to make a decision. But I feel that at the moment it's much more a weakness not to work with artists from all over the world when you run a gallery than a strength. This is much more. I mean, one can survive without working with artists from all over the world, but you will really suffer in terms of economy because it will really. There are so many new collectors, new buyers all over the world, and to engage with your gallery, they need to find an open door, and this open door is most of the time an artist that comes from their region or an artist they already collect. So I think it has a huge impact on the development of a gallery. So that's a little bit the contradiction of nowadays. That one hand, you will hear us saying that you have to really fall in love with an artist, to do it very sincerely, and your gallery program is the key to success. And on the other hand, there are some other strategic concerns which enter sometimes in contradiction with our discourse. And I think it's very hard to solve. I find it very difficult. I don't know if it answers your question about the nationality.
Yeah, but I want to say something. But sometimes the choices of the artist, geographical, it's not something that goes so deeply into an anthropological idea. I think that sometimes you can meet some elements, some points, some atmosphere, and you decide to follow these details and not the totality of the thing. So I think that if stays always everything in a very natural and articulate and possible position, yes, I can totally imagine to work with an artist that is completely on the other side of the world and very far from my culture. Otherwise, what is the point? If I don't know everything about the culture, I would never give to myself a possibility to enter into this aspect. I think it's the geographical problem is not a real problem. The geographical problem becomes a problem in the moment that we really consider it. Because I think in this phase of in our times, every time we discuss about geographical problems, we have to pay a lot of attention because it can be something very, very, very dangerous in both the sides. Because what you say is can be absolutely right, but can also be risky in terms of creating kind of ghettos of visions of reality. So I don't approach to that, even if I consider that, but I don't approach to that because I don't know that, because I don't know the entire history. I think the role of the art is also to make a synthesis and to work through parameters that very few fields work, that are details, that are small elements. I think this is why it's amazing what they do and what we do, because we work in a field that where it's not necessary to consider the entire aspect, but it's necessary to be able to recognize details. This is why we are lucky people, and this is why art can be something very important for the growth, because we are able to say that details are important, small segments are important. And if we are able to analyze small elements and small details and small segments, then maybe you are able to recognize things faster.
No, you're totally right. But it's actually a tendency to always think that what is happening abroad, that we have key to that we have access to it. I think what you said, that is using your full sensibility of an art lover gives a different level of access to artists who are very distant in terms of cultural background. And I fully agree with that. And then you have like also the practical perspective of Sylvia, which is about the time which is involved in working with an artist who is very far away, and it may affect the quality of either your life or your professional engagement. So that's a different perspective. Matthias, how do you feel about it?
I think it would be what you have nowadays. It would be dangerous to just take an artist, like I think, especially in China, like it's now a thing to take on a Chinese artist to enter the Chinese market, or sort of, just to enter the Chinese market. If I would find a Chinese artist which actually brings me a different aspect to my program, program-wise, I would consider it, because I think it's very important that also the program lives and gets exchanged, and then artists from different regions discuss with each other. I mean, most of our artists know each other and they're friends, and even if they do not live in the same city and rarely occasionally meet or so. But this is also a very interesting thing, which I've just realized after a few years having the gallery, that suddenly like this whole system, the artists themselves interact without the gallerist actually adding something, and speaking about the work, speaking about their exhibitions. Also, like if someone has an exhibition coming up in the gallery, asking another artist about the opinion, if like is this something I should do? Do you what do you say about that? And someone from like a different culture, a different continent, or sort of brings something new to the table, and is not necessarily a bad thing. I think a bad thing would be if you can't really, as a gallery, cater the needs of that artist. I mean, we spend too much time in the airplane, and we travel too much. And if you can't really cope with that, I mean, I'm a super young gallery. We are a very small team, and it's. If I would have, 30 artists, it would be impossible to run that. So, living all over. So yeah, it's always it's a personal thing. It's a personal choice of the gallery. How much resources do you have? What do you actually want? But on the terms of the intellectual side, I think it brings can bring a very interesting aspect to the program. To have outside, maybe not European or not American centered.
Some other questions? Maybe?
I think it's important to try to understand where you are, what you can do, and also to understand that maybe you cannot do everything, and it is obvious that the environment is changing and challenging, and that it's good to have an ability to adapt to the new situations. But at the same time, it's good to be aware that you cannot do everything all the time. So it's good to know what you can do.
Yeah. Are there other questions?
Where you are best at also.
Some other questions?
Yes, I have two questions, and I'll try to be quick. The first one is the one that you raised about gender. I also actually only have one female artist in my gallery. And it's something that suddenly is beginning to concern me. Whilst I agree completely with Sylvia that the quality of the artist is really the first criterion, I wonder, given that, as with any other sector, it's so women do face quite a lot of constraints, whether galleries, we should take an active role in trying to seek out female artists from different generations. I don't know what you feel about that. Secondly, I'm not sure that I absolutely understand what a consistent gallery program means, or even if it's desirable. I feel as a gallerist that I have a duty not only to the artists that I work with, but also the audience. And a lot of people come into my gallery that are not big collectors, that are not used to the art world, and I actually like to show them art that is a little bit different, to to sort of increase their knowledge of the sort of variety of art that's around. And I just wanted your comment on that.
I have nothing against about helping the female artists out there. It's perfectly fine with me. That doesn't mean that every single gallery has to do that. It's a choice. But I'm totally in favor of this. When the consistency of a gallery, I think that to understand the consistency of the gallery, you have to look at the gallery and see what the shows this gallery does, and the artists and the art fairs and everything. There is not one statement that can define exactly with every detail what consistency in a program is. Or I didn't find this sentence. When you say sometimes I have an audience and I like to see art that is different, I would like to ask you, what do you mean by art that is different?
Sure, sometimes I may show art that is very conceptual, and sometimes something which is not, which is more immediate and more what people would have traditionally thought of as art.
But I do that as well.
No,
Not all the art. I mean, I have always been told like I only show conceptual art, which is it's a total lie. A lot of my artists are not conceptual. I show painting and I show performance, and there's nothing to do between Peter Vermeer and Dora Garcia. But my program, I think, is consistent.
Yes, I suppose then what you're saying really is that the definition of consistent is something that needs to be explored.
It's a way of doing things also. It's maybe it's finding links in all the artists that you show. There's links, and if you see them and if you are able to show these links, that generates a certain consistency. For me, it's not so difficult, because if you are a consistent person, probably what the work you do will show that, I guess.
I think art fairs also are very interesting vitrines, and also full of contradictions, but very interesting vitrines, because you can see very often, this is somehow what a gallery wants to show out of the work it does in the space all year long. So it's a very interesting exercise to show, okay, now I have 50 meters to show the DNA of the program. Who am I? I'd like to, in a very competitive environment, and I think Matthias, you did it like wonderfully the last years. If you follow the presentations he did at art fairs, you get a very clear idea of, you see that it's a very consistent gallery with a voice, and someone like a team, they have something to say to the art world, and they show it step after step, not only in the gallery space, but also in art fairs. And you have also, especially with the younger generation of galleries, who are much more used to the medium art fair as a medium and not just as a selling place. While some wonderful galleries that I highly esteem, when they go to a fair, they don't care about the presentation. It's also, some have also like a political discourse about it, like Christian Nagel, for him a fair is a fair. The program of the gallery is it shows only in the gallery, and when you go to a fair, you just detach some more works from the context and you put them for sale in a fair. I think the younger generation of galleries, they have a different perspective, and they try to use this platform to communicate about who they are. And if you read carefully the art fair presentations of galleries, you will see what they are trying to do on an aesthetics level. Maybe not with only a statement, but when they start to combine several artists in one presentation, I mean, with Clive Nordonaco, it's very obvious you have a certain like signature from presentation to presentation, which is very, very consistent, and you can somehow identify what is the gallery about when you read these art fair presentations. So it's one way to see what is a consistent gallery, to observe what it is. Some other questions? Last one. Yeah. Always more questions about the market and about money issues than about the program. I'm a little bit worried.
Thank you for talking how to build a gallery program. I have another question, and maybe it's the opposite of what you've been talking. When you work with artists, it's often very personal, so you know them, you're friends with them often. And what do you do if you see that it doesn't go well and you have to get rid of an artist? And the second question is, what can be the reasons that you don't want to work with an artist anymore? I mean, if it's a financial reason.
It's a little bit, you know.
What do you think about
it? I think it's a kind of marriage situation, so it's always difficult to know. It's when you have no desire anymore, then you have to end the relationship. Some people can persist in a kind of ghost marriage forever. It's fine, but I think it doesn't work. So it's always a question of desire from both the artist side and the gallerist side, from my understanding.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think especially in a phase like my gallery, for example, is you start a relation and you start a collaboration with an artist, and often you start a collaboration with artists also quite young, you know, at the beginning. And then if you feel that there is not a kind of parallel growth, if you feel that work, you're not able to talk about that work anymore, I think it's quite easy to try. But then, of course, you can stop this relation, because I don't think it works for you and for the artist. That doesn't mean that the artist is not good. It means that your relation with the artist is not good. And sometimes when a gallery doesn't work well or stop to work on an artist, it's really complicated for the career of the artist. So I recently stopped to work with 2 artists, and I think we did more because I think that was a big damage for their career and also for the image of the gallery, because from my point of view, it seemed that I was not able to be professional, or I was not professional, I was not following the artist at his work. And from the point of view of the artist was not represented by me anymore in the way that it was. So I think that is not a drama. I think it's more like a step that you do. It's always a step. Even closing a gallery is a step. I really saw in this discussion these days that I realized more than so, that the mid-career galleries are the galleries that are in danger. And I was really surprised when I saw, when Mark Spiegler made the introduction, that a gallery that I totally respect, Wallspace, in New York, closed. And then this is also something that can happen to my galleries. I can close maybe tomorrow if things don't go. If I do 3 fairs that are not the fairs like I expect, I can close totally. I don't have millions. I think that there is always an opportunity, there is always the possibility to restart from that thing. We have to start to think in this way. So it's not a drama, it's something possible. And I think it's possible to try to see things as a kind of new possible beginning or as opportunities. This is.
But it should not be, or for me, it's not a reason. Like if an artist doesn't perform, we're going back to this, it doesn't exist. An artist always performs. it's not a financial thing. I mean, I have artists in the programs which sell better. I have artist programs which don't sell better, but maybe they get more institutional recognition and stuff. And that's the interesting about the gallery system, is that you incorporate everything, and sort of the gallery, maybe the artists who sell better, then sort of also finance the ones who don't sell better. But the ones who don't sell better are as important to the program as the ones who are on the more interesting to the market. So it would be a horrible thing to say, like, I'm dropping this artist because I haven't sold a painting or I haven't sold a sculpture in the last year. So this should not be the case. Then you I don't know, you did something wrong by starting this adventure with the artist.
The last question from Madame.
I really like what Giotto was saying, because for me at least, this is very central to this idea that galleries are about relationships. Are they marriages? Is there a mistress? We don't know. We're talking about all of that right now. But I like the way that you approached this idea, which is probably its own conversation. What happens when things go wrong in that relationship? And I have a funny anecdote, which you might want to end on also. Very, very nice artist, worked with him for over a decade. He sensed things were not going well. I sensed things were not going well, not just financially. The work had shifted dramatically. We tried our best to support it. It was harder to find an audience among the market share that we know, the curators that we have a relationship with, and et cetera. So I finally said to him, let's go out to dinner. Let's talk about this. I wanted to make it a little bit informal. So in the course of the dinner, he said, "Oh, would you pass the wine? And by the way, this isn't working, is it?" And I said, "No, actually, I was waiting for you to go there before I did." He said, "Okay, good. So we're in agreement. Will you help me to transition and find another gallery? Because I like the way you do things, but this fit just doesn't work for where you are and where I am." And we're actually in the process of making that happen, because he has some very important things happening on a museum level, and he does need the support. But because we had this open relationship, because we had this dialogue, we feel that on a very personal level, we can have this kind of human to human, not, artist to dealer, no power struggle. It's about what works for each of us because we respect each other.
Yeah. Of course, it's in this idea of helping the transition, you have to find also the way to convince someone else that you don't want to work with this artist anymore. And then, do you want to work with him? It happened with someone that closed the gallery and then came to me and said, "I think that you should work with this artist because I closed the gallery and I think that this artist has to continue to be present in the scene." From my position, in terms of how supporting Globets is in the general dimension, I think this is a little bit difficult. I think in a position like gallery like yours, there are other dynamics that can enter in ending the relation, and then you can go and talk with other galleries and say, "Listen, I'm not interested in following this anymore, but I think you are perfect, because I think the artist needs a more fresh situation, a more militant, a more active thing, and you can do this. I can't, because I'm working in another dimension." So this from my position, I think it's a little bit, yes, I can say maybe, there is an aesthetic that doesn't feel anymore, that doesn't fit anymore with what I'm doing. I think it fits more with you, but it's better maybe to try to build it before, and then you build a strategy, and then maybe you start to do exhibitions together, and maybe I think it's more interesting to build this transition before, and then to arrive to a point, because people have to believe you. Because another point, the career of the artist can be really in danger when you don't work with an artist anymore. That's an important point. I have a question. What do we eat?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
all.
Georgina.
Thank you, Sven.